ever wondered why your electrical panel, that forgotten gray box in your basement, might be the biggest obstacle to your home's energy future? With the push to electrify everything from cars to stoves, your outdated panel could be holding you back.
Your trusted source for information on the energy transition. This is the Insider's Guide to Energy podcast. Welcome to another edition of the Insider's Guide to Energy. I'm your host, Chris Sass, and with me is your co-host, Jeff McAulay. Jeff, what are we going to do this week?
Chris, I'm really excited about today's conversation because it's actually part of my personal home electrification journey. A lot of the conversations we have are very high level and abstract, national or international, and this one really hits home. So we're talking about home electrification and the importance of that little gray box that's hanging on your wall and in your basement. So excited to be talking to Kurt. We're excited to be talking to Curtis Bonn, Head of Utility Partnerships at SPAN. Kurt, welcome to the show.
Jeff, great to be here. Chris, thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it, guys.
So, Kurt, I got to say, from our prep call, I discovered that I'm actually one of the, I wouldn't want to say poster child, but one of the key target audiences of the SPAN panel. We want to hear a little bit about what that was. We want to hear a little bit about what the SPAN panel is and how it helps. But just to set a little context first, I'm a homeowner. I just recently bought a new house. It requires substantial renovations, and we want to go in, rip out oil heat. We want to add heat pumps. We want to add EV chargers. Maybe we want to add solar and home battery. And I'm learning that actually our current electric panel is significantly constrained to the point that we might need to do a utility upgrade or other types of electrical rewiring. What does the SPAN panel do, and how does it fit into that context?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Jeff, you are the poster child. This is fantastic. And really a classic use case where we see SPAN becoming a relevant technology for homes that are looking to electrify. So at SPAN, we've been making smart panels, and we've been on this mission of electrification for residential homes since around 2018. Our flagship product, as you're alluding to, is our SPAN Smart Panel. We've had that in market now since 2020, and really we're seeing great adoption of this product for homes that are literally going through the same kind of renovation and electrification journey that you are in your house. And so ultimately what our technology does is prevent the need for the utility to come out and increase the service drop to your home so that all these new electric loads in the home can ultimately work just fine without any inconvenience on behalf of yourself or your family. And we do that through proprietary technology and what we call an energy management system within our smart panel that basically handles and manages all the electric load, pausing, shifting, taking control on behalf of you and your preferences on how you want the home to ultimately act and behave, again, without any need for waiting for that utility to come to your home and the costs that are associated with that. So it's been a great journey, and very, very excited for you and your family to be on that journey as well.
So, follow-up question there.
Yeah.
How does one know what the electrical service is to the home in the first place, and how would anybody realize that they were going to exceed that? That's not a normal math calculation that I have. It's not on my electricity bill.
That's right.
How do I even learn that I need that utility service upgrade?
It's a really great question, Jeff. I would say the vast majority of customers across the U.S. and probably, frankly, the world for that matter, really have no idea how much power in terms of either amperage or currents flowing into the home from the utility. I'd be surprised if to see if the majority of household owners would actually know where the panel is located. I'm probably the only one in my house that knows where it's at. I'm sitting collecting dust in my basement today, but. Again, most customers don't. The utility wouldn't even be able to tell you if you likely picked up the phone to call. Ultimately, a homeowner has to go to the basement, open up that panel, and look at the main circuit breaker rating. You're going to see either 100 amps, 150 amps, 200 amps, again, whatever it's going to see on that main breaker rating. That's certainly one path. Likely the majority of situations in terms of how the homeowner is going to learn about how much power is coming into the home is through an installer, through an electrician or a contractor that they're working with. as they think through the different electric appliances that they may want to add to the home. Could be an EV, could be an induction stove. It's usually going to be that contractor that helps and educates that homeowner through the process.
Well, I think that's where I was going to go. I mean, I didn't get tuned into span until one of my close friends came over and I was having some electric bill issues and I wanted to troubleshoot it. And he's a huge EV fanatic and he was super excited to tell me all about span and what it could do for me and how my life would change. But Jeff started this saying that people are starting to care about the gray box. So is it mainstream or is it people that is there an inflection point in someone's life that suddenly that panel in the basement that's been working for the last 20, 30 years just great becomes important? What's changing to drive this? I mean, obviously Jeff's case, they're doing renovation, they're looking at solar, they're looking at batteries, a lot of stuff happening there, a lot of moving parts, but the average homeowner is probably not doing that. When do they get this inflection point?
Yeah, you're right. I think Jeff, as he discusses whole home electrification, probably a minority of those homes that are going through some form of electrification. I would say most customers are maybe starting with the adoption of an EV, right? And so through that process, they're working with an electrical contractor to have that EV charger installed at the home, so they can have a really good EV ownership experience and a good level 2 charge, which is likely required for that. And so that contractor is going to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, it turns out you only have 100 amps flowing into your home. We're, through the different HVAC and other electric loads in your home, we're already accounting for 60 to 70% of the capacity that your main panel can handle. Ultimately, you need to have an upgrade if you want a level 2 charger for your EV. And really, that's kind of a classic use case example where the homeowner and the electrician have those two options, like we mentioned before. Either you pick up the phone for your utility and you get that service upgrade, or you look for an alternative solution like span that can avoid the utility service upgrade using our energy management tools and software to make sure that the homeowner has a really great experience. Yeah.
Kurt, tell us what the smart electrical panel is actually doing to stay within that, let's say, 100 amp limit. Is it turning things on and off? It seems like if you're just limiting power to certain appliances, that might not, does that hurt the appliances at all? How do you do that load balancing?
Yeah, all the magic behind the box, right? Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. It's a really great question. And one thing to share right away is that 100 amps for the vast majority of US homes is actually a lot of electrical headroom. So we go back to the 60s, 70s, even mid 80s, homes were still being built with 100 amp service because it was a truly adequate level of electric service. And frankly, today, if you're not electrifying, it still is today. The challenge becomes we have a very conservative electrical code here in the United States, which, again, from a safety first mentality is a really good thing. We never want concurrent loads stacking up above 80%. So in the case of your home, Jeff, we never want to go above 80 amps. But that's likely going to happen as soon as you add an EV to your home load and you're running air conditioning in the summertime or heat in the wintertime, right? We're going to see those concurrent loads go above 80 amps or 80% per the National Electric Code rules. And that's really what is the catalyst for that upgrade or for a solution like span. And so ultimately what we do is we're constantly sensing how much current is flowing into the home, into the panel, and then down to the circuit level as well. And so what we can see is that, hey, if Jeff's home is starting to approach that 80% rule, what we're going to do, we're going to use the preferences that Jeff has set within the span experience, the span home app that is. We're going to start to either pause or shift loads so that, again, the total level of current through the entire home never exceeds 80%, keeping in line with the National Electric Code. And so we use a UL 916 EMS or energy management system to make all of that magic happen behind the scenes so that, again, it's all automated. It's like that old George Foreman set it and forget it commercial, if you guys remember that. It's really that simple. So through the installation process, the span installer is going to help you as the homeowner choose which electric loads are good candidates for being paused or for being shifted into a later point in the day. Again, so those loads always stay within a safe level. And so to that point, Jack, yeah, we have controls down to the circuit level. We're constantly measuring. And what's great too is that our controls are ANSI certified. And so we can ultimately be a great measurement and validation tool for utility programs and to give really, really great and accurate insights and energy saving tips for homeowners as well.
When you're talking the 100 amp limit, and I guess I'm lucky because I have double that in my home. For some reason, I've got multiple panels and lines coming in. But I would think as we get more energy efficient, that we try to live within the means of what the pipe is rather than make a bigger pipe, right? So aren't our appliances getting more efficient in, we use less electricity than we did? Or is it simply that we're just adding more and more devices? What's
Yeah,
it seems counterintuitive. It seems like we're trying to reduce, and we've been for years, changing to LED light bulbs and trying to be Energy Star appliances, trying to reduce the load. And now you're saying, well, we're going to need to upgrade it or manage it differently.
Yeah, I think, Chris, it's a little bit of both. Collectively, we're doing a really great job. The DOE, Energy Star, we are collectively, as kind of a broader energy ecosystem, doing a really good job of making new appliances much more energy efficient. However, just can't overcome the level of new electric loads that are hitting the house and at the pace at which they are, right? So let's just take a level 2 charge for an EV as an example here. Potentially 48 amps of electricity are going to flow to that EV charger, when again, in the case of a 100 amp home, as much as we can make that refrigerator in Jeff's home efficient and the new washing machine electric dryer efficient, we're just adding so much electric load for these, quote unquote, all electric homes, or even homes that are beginning their electrification to become all electric, that we really need to take action and thinking through a system like SPAN to help a home manage all of that new load.
Do I need smart appliances to take advantage of the SPAN, or can you do it with the legacy appliances in the house?
That's the really nice thing about SPAN, is that even if you have quote unquote kind of dumb or traditional appliances, like my refrigerator in my home is a good 5 or 6 years old, still works great. Is Energy Star certified, but just doesn't have Wi-Fi or kind of the smarts that you're referring to. Every single kilowatt ultimately in the home will flow through a SPAN panel, right? If you have a SPAN in your home. And because we can control and measure and turn on or off that circuit anywhere in the world where we have an internet connection, we make that appliance smart. So if I was to enroll my refrigerator into a demand response or VPP program, I could do that without having to replace my fridge because it's routed through the SPAN panel. And we have controls, again, down to the circuit level. And that's the neat thing. So we're talking with utilities and different ecosystem partners around really whole home demand response and VPP capabilities through SPAN, because we have all those connection points into even traditional kind of dumb appliances at this point.
Mm-hmm. So a couple questions. First of all, got to just talk about units. Our whole conversation has been in amps. I almost never talk in units of amps. Even for energy nerds, we're talking kilowatts for power, kilowatt hours for energy usage, and that's the kilowatt hours are what shows on the electricity bill. Now we're talking amps. So, I don't even know how much amperage my refrigerator draws. I mean, I don't really think in amps. So just wanted to clarify the units. And then second part after you're done with that is, if you're throttling current, that's not going to hurt the refrigerator. It's expecting to get some amount of juice. You're giving it less to balance between different appliances. That's not hurting any of these appliances by doing the throttling that you're talking about.
Yeah, Jeff, great clarification. So SPAN controls energy in a few different ways. Certainly, as I mentioned, we have the ability to turn on or off a circuit using the relays that sit behind the circuit breakers in our panel. And we can do that very confidently with electric resistive loads. Think an electric pool pump, think an electric stove, could be an electric dryer. We have done really rigorous testing with several different manufacturers and loads of different appliances to suggest we have great confidence that we're not going to disrupt the quality of life, or the quality or the duration or life cycle of those electric appliances. So I'll set that aside for a minute. But we also have advanced what you mentioned as throttling capabilities. So SPAN actually also manufactures an EV charger. It's what we call Drive. We can actually throttle the amount of current from 48 amps all the way down to 6 amps in 1 amp increments, so that as different parts of the home need to borrow energy, so to speak, we can still allow your home to give some sort of charge to your EV while, let's say, the pool pump runs, or while the induction stove kind of goes through its cycles, or through the HVAC system as it runs its natural cycles. And so more and more we're actually deploying throttling capabilities. One other example is with Mitsubishi. We recently announced a partnership where we can actually throttle the amount of current that flows to their GS heat pump lineup from 100% down to 75% and 50%, so that the homeowner can still get comfort out of their heat pump from Mitsubishi, while other parts of the home, could be your EV or otherwise, can have the appropriate either kilowatts that it needs or amperage. And to your point, yes, amperage is a rarely used term in these types of conversations. It's what I'm trained to talk about, but the whole point here is that SPAN is using very sophisticated, but albeit graceful ways, so that we are pausing, managing, or shifting loads to the right appliances, and not disturbing the quality of those appliances. Yeah.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. Everything we've talked about so far sounds like it's from the homeowner's perspective, but demand response is something that the grid would probably look for, and it sounds like you're uniquely positioned to help offer that. So is your service solely focused inward towards the customer, or is the utility also working with SPAN to do demand response?
Yeah, it's really both. So we at SPAN started our journey and our mission of electrification for homeowners. That's really where we got our start. A few years into our journey, I think utilities started to take note of, hey, like this is a really interesting product for us to be thinking about. In fact, that's how I joined SPAN a year ago. After spending 7 years at an investor-owned utility here in Michigan, I saw the SPAN panel really as a Swiss Army knife of benefits, not just for the homeowner, but for the utility too, because of the fact that we're preventing a service upgrade, so we're getting more out of that pipe than building a bigger pipe, to your point earlier, Chris. So we're not having to allocate resources to get to the home to allow the homeowner to begin their electrification journey, but we're also connecting all of these important loads in the home. And so SPAN, in that sense, Chris, yeah, we're working with utilities, we're working with different aggregators and different energy system providers to be thinking about how we can help make the loads that are connected to a SPAN panel become part of grid flexible programs. Again, it could be a DR program, a more appliance-focused DR program, which we typically hear about today, or a whole home kind of DR, VPPP type platform or program that we're hearing more about in more advanced conversations. So we're really serving both. It's been especially for myself as I oversee our utility partnerships, it's been a wonderful conversation to have over the last 6 to 12 months to say, look, not only are we helping an acute problem, getting a homeowner up and running with an EV or other electrified loads, but think about SPAN in a more broader context as we think about non-wires alternatives, VPPs, and beyond.
So you also mentioned in your previous answer about what you turn off. You talked about turning the air conditioner off or maybe the refrigerator off. And usually the house is pretty efficient, right? You can shut the air conditioner off for a little bit and the homeowner's not going to really feel a significant difference. Or, even when the power goes out, my refrigerator holds cold long enough that my food doesn't defrost or get cold. Is there logic or a method to your madness of what appliances you choose to shut down? In what order?
Yeah, so what's again, through the rigorous testing that we've done, and having a world-class customer experience really sits at everything we do in terms of decision making on product and feature sets, all the way through the installation experience that a homeowner will go through alongside a certified SPAN installer. And through that app experience where the installer is going to work with the homeowner just like Jeff, the app is going to recommend appliances that will, in a priority order, be paused or shifted based on what we know to be a really great customer experience. So we're likely not going to recommend that Jeff's new induction stove be the first to be paused. Mrs. McAulay may not be so pleased if we pause that induction stove on Thanksgiving or Christmas, right? So it's those types of experiences that we want to avoid. The first electric load that we typically recommend being paused is the EV. Why? Because what we know is that if there are concurrent loads that approach that 80% limit, like we talked about earlier in the conversation, we only need to maybe pause that EV for 5 or 10 minutes before the home cools off and kind of gets back to a normal state. Through thousands of panels and research and analysis of the data that we have across all the different SPAN panels that we've deployed so far, that's exactly what our analysis is recommended that typically these events happen for maybe 5 or 10 minutes before kind of a natural usage pattern of the home kind of starts to play out again. And so, to that point, an EV, it could be an electric dryer, it could be a pool pump, so maybe a electric appliance that we don't need right away to make sure that our convenience within a home experience continues to be great. We'll look at those appliances first. And what's great about SPAN, however, is that the homeowner is always in control. So even if we preset in a priority order which appliances should be paused, Jeff or any other SPAN homeowner always has control, and they can make sure that in an event where we are pausing loads, let's say I'm pausing my EV, but I have to take the kids to soccer, I need a full charge, you can move that EV over to a must-have circuit, and you can allow a second or third electric appliance to be paused or shifted as needed.
Kurt, this also would work as an emergency circuit if the power goes out. So if I've got a home battery plus maybe home solar, it's really important. It's not about the utility service. It's about I've got a limited amount of juice in a battery. Which things do I want to run in the home? So that's useful for backup too.
100%. What's great about SPAN is, again, through loads of testing that we've done, also with ESS systems, and we do have integrations with the leading 5 battery manufacturers, Tesla, LG, and beyond, is that we can actually increase a battery's capacity or battery life, if you will, by about 40% through our automatic load shedding. So the idea that a battery, once a SPAN panel is installed, no longer has to power the entire home, right? So if you have a traditional load center today and occur an outage, that battery is going to want to power the entire home, right? With a SPAN panel, you can actually choose which circuits are being powered by your battery and which ones are not. And you no longer have to run around the house, turning light switches off, on or on, right? SPAN's going to do that gracefully and automatically on your behalf. And through that testing, we've seen that we can actually increase, again, the capacity of your home's battery by about 40%. And so maybe you don't need to purchase a second Powerwall or a third Powerwall. Maybe one Powerwall plus SPAN is going to be good enough for you, plus a really fantastic experience, ultimately saving you dollars at the end of the day.
You're reading my mind, which is getting to the dollars, which is really important because I'm listening for, okay, in this journey, it sounds like just about every time as a homeowner, I'm running into an extra cost that I didn't know I needed, which is, oh, I know I got the EV, I know I need a charger, oops, wait, I also need this panel upgrade, or I'm gonna have to wait 12 months or whatever it is for the utility service upgrade. What you've highlighted now is a case where I want a backup battery instead of a generator. I have no idea how long that battery will last, so I'm looking at maybe 1, 2, or 3 Powerwalls or whoever it is. And what you're saying is by investing in a panel, I could avoid purchasing or oversizing the battery backup. So that's important. And then just before you answer, there's a lot of incentives out there. So I'm assuming whether that's a tax or a rebate or a utility. So what is that expense range? And then how is that offset through various incentives?
Yeah, great question. So I'll unpack that question set a little bit, Jeff. So first and foremost, let's talk about the cost of a traditional utility upgrade. Generally what we hear, and this is data points from utilities, West Coast, East Coast, and in Midwest and beyond, typically minimum cost that the homeowner would receive around $3,000, and the utility themselves would bear around $10,000 to $12,000. So think about $15,000 of overall cost that has to get divvied up between the homeowner and the utility. Very important point here. The cost that the utility bears in some cases is going to flow right back into rates. That's exactly what we don't want to do. As we think about this broader journey of electrification and decarbonization that we're taking, utilities are taking, state agencies are taking, the DOE's taking, we don't want rates to increase just because we're trying to become a greener world and a better place to live. And that's what's happening in some jurisdictions. So getting back to those costs, if you do call for a service upgrade, like I mentioned, could be $3,000. That's if you have overhead service. If you are one of the lucky individuals that has underground service, like I do at my home here in Michigan, the trenching and all of the work that it's going to take for an underground service upgrade can raise very, very quickly. And it's not uncommon to hear about quotes from the utility of like 20, 30, 40, maybe even $50,000. We had one span customers that's in California get a quote from their local utility for $70,000 because of the length of the line that had to be ran from the local transformer. And that, of course, that's an anomaly, right? We're not hearing about those types of costs all the time, but we are hearing about them enough to mention them, at least on this conversation. And so that's certainly a part of it as the homeowner thinks through what is the most efficient way for electrification. So, we'll talk about that. Now let's talk about the span side of things. We retail for $3,500, right? And we install just like a traditional load center would. So between the cost of our panel and likely $2,000 to $3,000 that you're going to have with the contractor to install the span panel and upgrade any wiring, we see ourselves as a very competitive solution for the need, like your home, Jeff, where we have to figure out a solution, either upgrading the utility service or going to a technology like span. And of course, so we enable electrification for the home, but then we bring all of those great features through the Span Home app to the homeowner. We're seeing and hearing of our customers saving up to 15% on their monthly energy bill, right? Because of the different insights and trend and information that we're giving to the homeowner, the ability to turn on or off circuits, the ability to control and schedule circuits. It could be based on the time of use rate or just the fact that you want to turn on your outdoor security lights at a certain time of the day and not run them the entire evening. Different methodologies like that. But all in all, we see ourselves as a very competitive solution and one that our customers are extremely pleased with once they install.
Just one follow-up that I want to make sure you include if it's true. Is there a specific rebate for an electrical panel upgrade? I think there is under the IRA. I was looking at Rewiring America on their portal, and I think they mentioned you specifically.
There is. Thanks for prompting me on that. 25C is the tax credit that would apply to the actual installation of a technology like Span and our Span panel. So look into that if you are considering a solution like Span. 25C is a great resource for all customers, all homeowners, specifically for the federal rebate dollars that are starting to flow through the IRA. And more specifically, the Home Energy and Appliance Rebate Program, or what we call HERE. This is a really tremendous, I would say, once in a generational type opportunity to help low and middle income customers help create efficiency with their homes, deploy different technologies like Span, like energy efficient heat pumps. Specifically for smart panels like Span, an income qualified customer can see up to $6,500 in rebates between the panel itself and the electrical wiring that would go with it. So again, just a tremendous opportunity for homeowners of all customer classes to look at adopting technologies like Span. Thanks for catching that, Jeff. It's an important point.
You keep talking about current homeowners. What are the developers in new home construction? Is this going into new homes right now? Are you working with developers or the large developers that do these big rows of houses? And is that happening?
We are, Chris. Just a few months ago, in the spring of 2024, we announced a national partnership with Pulte, in fact. So we're starting to work real closely with new home developers like Pulte, like others, Beasler Homes in Maryland, for instance, where they're actually using Span's smart panels right out of the gate. So rather than installing a traditional load center, right, as a home goes vertical, why not install a Span smart panel? Give all the controls to the homeowner, make that entire home grid interactive right out of the gate so that we don't have to retrofit that home down the road as they add more and more electric appliances, which the trends all suggest will happen. And so new home construction is one of our fastest growing channels at Span to that point.
And what happens when the internet is down? You said you need an internet connection for Span. So assume that there's an outage in the internet, which happens from time to time. You may have your cable provider or your internet provider go down. How does that impact your user?
Well, first and foremost, a Span panel is a safety panel, like through and through. So we bring all the same mechanics, all the same safety protocols and certifications of a traditional load center. The internet connection that a Span panel requires helps bring the energy management experience to life for the homeowner. That's really the key difference. So again, power outage, and you don't have any battery backup, your safety panel would go through the same processes that a traditional load center would, and when the power returns, we're going to function just in the same way and have all the same safety mechanics within the panel. But what the internet connection does, and we do have multiple and redundant communications, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, as well as 4G antenna in our panels, is that it brings that home energy management experience to life, giving trends, giving real-time information to the homeowner. It's that type of information that leads to the energy savings, leads to the ability to enroll either certain circuits or the whole home into different utility programs, again, because of the connection points to the outside world. And so it's a really neat kind of holistic set of features that we bring within the SPAN panel to that end.
Wonderful. Kurt, again, I really appreciate being able to go through this, as it's part of my personal home electrification journey. I learned a lot on today's call. Really fascinating. So thank you for going into all of the detail here. And I'm sure our listeners will find it useful as well. So for people who are out there, talk to your electrical contractor about SPAN in your home electrification journey. And Kurt, thank you so much for being our guide today.
Jeff, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's been a pleasure having Kurt on the program today. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we did making it. Extremely interesting topic. If you're doing any kind of work at home, adding an EV or stuff, SPAN certainly comes across our radar. I know I've seen it myself. So thank you, Kurt, for the program. For our audience, we'll see you again next time on the Insider's Guide to Energy. Bye for now.